In a world that never stops talking, silence feels uncomfortable, suspicious even. And yet, something strange happens when everything goes quiet. Let me ask you something, and don't answer out loud. Why do you feel the urge to explain your progress to people who aren't responsible for your life? Why does change feel incomplete unless someone sees it, validates it, reacts to it? And why is it that the most meaningful shifts in your life never happen when you're announcing them? In a culture addicted to visibility, silence looks like weakness. But psychologically, silence is often a sign of strength forming, because real order doesn't begin with motivation. It doesn't begin with goals. It doesn't begin with routines or productivity systems. It begins with something far more unsettling. It begins when you stop performing your life and start confronting it. Most people try to organize their lives in public. They change habits loudly. They announce discipline. They broadcast routines, plans, intentions, transformations. And then, quietly, they fail. Not because they lack discipline, but because their inner world is still chaotic. Psychologically speaking, a disorganized life is rarely the real problem. It is the symptom of a mind constantly reacting, of emotions left unattended, of unconscious patterns driving decisions behind the scenes. Carl Jung once said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That sentence alone explains why so many people feel stuck, overwhelmed, or constantly restarting. They try to impose order from the outside while chaos continues operating internally. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. You don't need a new system. You need a new relationship with silence. Silence is where the noise of the persona collapses. The persona, the mask you wear to function socially, to appear capable, stable, successful. Silence is dangerous to the persona because without an audience, there's no one to impress. And without someone to impress, you're forced to face what's actually there. Your thoughts when no one is watching, your habits when no one is praising, your motivations when no one is clapping. This is why organizing your life in silence feels threatening at first, because silence removes excuses. There is no distraction to hide behind, no narrative to maintain, no image to protect, only structure or the lack of it. Most people avoid silence not because they dislike peace, but because silence reveals misalignment. It reveals the gap between who you say you are and how you actually live. That gap is uncomfortable, so people fill it with noise. But those who truly change do the opposite. They withdraw, not to escape life, but to rebuild it, quietly. In psychology, there's a crucial difference between isolation and withdrawal. Isolation is fear-driven. Withdrawal is intentional. Withdrawal is when the psyche instinctively pulls energy inward to reorganize. Nature does this constantly. So does the human mind. When something is breaking, expansion stops, consolidation begins. This is why meaningful order is never loud. It forms underground. While others announce goals, the disciplined mind observes patterns. While others seek approval, the organized psyche builds coherence. While others chase speed, the structured mind slows down. Silence becomes a container, a place where thoughts settle instead of collide, where emotions are processed instead of suppressed, where decisions emerge from clarity, not impulse. This is not passivity. It is psychological architecture, and it's deeply misunderstood. People assume that if you are quiet, you are unsure. If you don't explain yourself, you must be lost. If you don't announce change, it must not be happening. In reality, the opposite is often true. The most stable transformations happen when no one is watching. Because silence removes performance pressure, it removes comparison, it removes the need to rush results for external validation. And this is where real organization begins. not with planners, not with habits, but with internal alignment. When your inner world becomes structured, the outer world follows naturally. Your decisions become simpler, your boundaries clearer, your energy stops leaking. You no longer need to convince anyone that you're changing. Your life starts doing that for you. And here's the paradox. The quieter you become internally, the more ordered your life appears externally. Not because you control everything, but because fewer things control you. In the next part, we'll explore why chaos in daily life is almost never accidental. Why clutter, procrastination, emotional exhaustion, and constant distraction are psychological signals, not character flaws. And how understanding this changes the way you approach discipline forever. For now, sit with this thought. If you had to rebuild your life without telling anyone, what would actually change? That question alone tells you where real order begins. Silence. Most people believe chaos just happens to them. They blame bad timing, bad luck, a demanding world. Other people. But psychologically, chaos is rarely random. It has structure, it has logic, and most importantly, it has a purpose. When your life feels disorganized, it's not because you are incapable of order, it's because something inside you has not been integrated yet. Carl Jung was very clear about this. What remains unconscious does not disappear. It organizes your life from the shadows. That's why some people keep repeating the same patterns, even when they swear they want change. They clean their house, but their mind stays cluttered. They organize their schedule, but feel exhausted. They set goals, but sabotage consistency, because the real disorder is not external, it's internal, and the psyche always expresses itself. If emotions are ignored, they show up as distraction. If fears are avoided, they show up as procrastination. If unresolved conflicts are buried, they show up as exhaustion. The mind never stays silent when something is unresolved. It creates noise, constant thinking, restlessness, impulsive behavior, the feeling of always being behind. This is not laziness, it's psychic tension. A mind divided against itself cannot create order. Many people try to force discipline without understanding this. They push harder, they punish themselves, they add more rules, but pressure does not create structure. Integration does. Jung used the concept of the shadow to explain this perfectly. The shadow is not evil. It is simply what you have not accepted, understood, or allowed into awareness. Parts of your personality that didn't fit expectations, emotions that were inconvenient, desires that felt unsafe, needs that were ignored. These parts don't disappear. They reorganize your life from below. They pull you toward distractions. They weaken your focus. They sabotage long-term plans, not because they want to destroy you, but because they want to be seen. Chaos, then, becomes communication. A signal that something inside you is asking for attention. This is why people who live in constant disorder often feel strangely familiar with it. Chaos feels uncomfortable, but also known, predictable, safe in a strange way. Order, on the other hand, feels threatening because order removes excuses. Order means responsibility, consistency, facing yourself without noise. That's why many people unconsciously resist it. They say they want clarity, but clarity exposes truth, and truth demands change. So the psyche delays order by creating mess. It's a defense mechanism. If everything is chaotic, you never have to fully commit. If you're always overwhelmed, you never have to fully choose. Jung said that people don't become neurotic because life is hard. They become neurotic because they avoid what life is asking of them. Chaos is often avoidance disguised as circumstance. Avoidance of grief, avoidance of responsibility, avoidance of maturity, avoidance of inner confrontation. And the more you avoid, the louder life becomes. Deadlines pile up, relationships strain, energy drains, until something forces you to stop. This is why trying to organize your life without addressing inner disorder feels exhausting. You are fighting your own psyche. True organization doesn't suppress chaos. It listens to it. It asks, what is this disorganization protecting me from? What would happen if my life actually became quiet and structured? What would I be forced to feel, to decide, to let go of? These questions scare the ego, because the ego likes control, but not transformation. Transformation requires surrendering illusions, and this is where silence becomes essential again. Silence allows patterns to reveal themselves. You begin to notice where your attention escapes, where your energy leaks, where you avoid commitment, not with judgment, with curiosity. And that curiosity changes everything, because once chaos is understood, it no longer needs to shout. Order begins to form naturally, not as rigidity, but as coherence. In the next block, we'll explore how daily presence, especially at the start of the day, reconnects you with the organizing center of the psyche, the part Jung called the self, the place where order is not forced but guided. For now, consider this. If chaos in your life had a message, what would it be asking you to face? That answer is closer than you think. Most people don't realize that the way they start their day quietly determines the structure of their entire life. Not in a motivational sense, not in a productivity sense, but in a psychological one. The first moments after waking are not neutral. They are liminal, a threshold between unconscious and conscious life. Carl Jung understood this deeply. When you wake up, your ego is not fully in control yet. The unconscious is still close. Dream material is still active. Emotions are still raw. Defenses are still soft. This moment is a doorway, and what you do with it decides who will lead your day, your ego or yourself. Most people unknowingly hand control to the external world immediately. They check notifications, they absorb news, they respond to demands, they consume noise. Psychologically, this does something very specific. It reinforces the dominance of the ego. The ego is the part of you that reacts, that compares, that manages appearances, that tries to control outcomes. The ego is useful, but it is not wise. When the ego dominates without connection to the self, life becomes fragmented. You act, but without meaning. You move, but without direction. You stay busy, but internally disconnected. This is why so many people feel tired before the day even begins. They start their day already divided. Jung described the self as the organizing center of the psyche, not the ego. The self. The self is not loud. It does not demand. It does not rush. It communicates through intuition, symbols, feelings, and subtle inner alignment. And the only way to hear it is through presence, silence, stillness. When you begin the day quietly, something subtle happens. Your nervous system stabilizes. Your attention comes back inward. Your psyche begins to align instead of fragment. This is not spiritual poetry. It is psychological reality. A mind that starts the day without immediate stimulation has more coherence throughout the day. Decisions become clearer. Reactivity decreases. Impulses soften, because instead of being pulled outward, you are anchored inward. Think about this carefully. If your day begins in reaction, your life becomes reactive. If your day begins in presence, your life gains direction. Many people believe they don't have time for morning presence, but psychologically, what they are really saying is, I don't want to feel what's waiting for me in silence, because silence reveals. Unprocessed emotions rise, unresolved questions appear, inner conflict surface, and this can be uncomfortable. That discomfort is not a problem, it is information. The psyche uses silence to communicate. That's why Jung valued reflection so deeply. Not thinking, reflection. Thinking is often compulsive, reflection is receptive. In reflection, you don't force answers. You allow clarity to emerge. Even 10 minutes of conscious presence in the morning creates a psychological boundary. It tells the unconscious, I am listening. And when the psyche feels heard, it stops creating chaos to get attention. This is why people who develop a silent morning ritual often experience unexpected changes. They become less impulsive, less distracted, more grounded. Not because life becomes easier, but because their inner structure becomes stronger. The ego is no longer alone. It is supported by the self. And when ego and self cooperate, life gains coherence. Jung warned that modern life pulls people away from this center. Constant stimulation fractures attention. Speed weakens reflection. Noise replaces meaning. Morning presence is a quiet rebellion against this fragmentation. It is a decision to begin the day from the inside out. This does not require perfection. It does not require meditation mastery or spiritual language or strict routines. It requires honesty, sitting quietly, breathing without forcing, observing thoughts without chasing them, feeling the body without judging it. In these moments, something important happens. You remember yourself, not your role, not your responsibilities, not your image, your inner continuity. This continuity is what allows order to form naturally. Without it, organization becomes mechanical, temporary, exhausting. With it, structure feels supportive, not oppressive. This is why people who ignore presence often feel like discipline is punishment, and those who cultivate presence experience discipline as alignment. Presence makes effort meaningful. Without presence, effort becomes resistance. This is also why silence feels threatening to many. Silence removes distraction, and distraction protects avoidance. Avoidance of grief, avoidance of dissatisfaction, avoidance of truth. But the self does not judge what it reveals. It integrates. When you start your day with presence, you begin the process of individuation daily. You are not becoming someone else. You are becoming whole. And this wholeness begins shaping your choices long before conscious planning. You choose differently. You speak differently. You respond instead of react. Not because you try harder, but because you are more centered. In the next block, we will explore how reducing distractions throughout the day protects this inner alignment and prevents fragmentation of the psyche. Because presence in the morning must be defended during the day. Otherwise, the world will slowly pull you away from yourself again. For now, hold this question gently. Who is leading your day when it begins? Your inner center or the noise outside you? That answer shapes more than you realize. Distraction is not a harmless habit. It is a psychological force. And in the modern world, it is one of the main reasons people feel internally fragmented, anxious, and directionless without understanding why. Carl Jung understood something most people still resist today. The psyche cannot integrate when it is constantly interrupted. Every interruption breaks continuity. Every distraction fractures attention. And attention is not just focus. Attention is energy. Where your attention goes, your psychic energy follows. When your attention is scattered across endless stimuli, your inner world loses coherence. This is not a metaphor. It is how the mind functions. Jung believed that the unconscious constantly seeks expression, but when the conscious mind is overloaded with external input, the unconscious has no space to surface. It doesn't disappear, it accumulates. And what accumulates without expression eventually manifests as anxiety, irritability, compulsive behavior, or a vague sense of emptiness. This is why many people feel off without knowing why. They are not broken, they are overstimulated. Distraction creates a psychological illusion of movement without progress. You scroll, you switch tasks, you consume information, but internally, nothing is integrated. The psyche remains unfinished. Jung warned that a mind disconnected from its inner symbols becomes dominated by external forces, trends, opinions, collective moods, unconscious imitation. This is what he called possession by the collective unconscious. When you do not consciously choose what enters your mind, the collective chooses for you, and the collective does not care about your individuation. It cares about conformity. Reducing distractions, then, is not about productivity or discipline. It is about protecting the boundary between your inner world and external chaos. Boundaries are psychological structures. Without them, the ego becomes porous. A porous ego absorbs too much, processes too little, and reacts instead of choosing. This leads to mental fatigue, emotional volatility, and loss of direction. Many people believe they lack motivation. What they actually lack is containment. The psyche needs containment to mature. Just as a child needs structure to develop, the inner world needs limits to grow. Endless stimulation prevents this maturation. When you reduce distractions, something initially uncomfortable happens. Silence expands, and silence reveals. Unresolved thoughts surface, delayed emotions rise, inner conflicts demand attention. This is why distraction is addictive. It protects you from encountering yourself. But Jung would argue that avoiding the inner world does not eliminate its influence. It strengthens it unconsciously. That is how shadow material gains power. The shadow is not dangerous because it is dark. It is dangerous because it is unconscious. Distraction keeps the shadow hidden, but active. When you remove distractions, the psyche begins reorganizing itself. Not immediately, not gently. At first, there is restlessness. The mind searches for stimulation. The ego feels exposed. There is discomfort. This is not regression. It is withdrawal from overstimulation. Over time, a deeper process begins. Your thoughts slow down. Your emotions become clearer. Your inner signals become audible again. Jung believed that intuition requires silence. Intuition is not logical deduction. It is perception. And perception requires space. In a distracted mind, intuition is drowned out. In a quieter mind, it becomes reliable guidance. This is why people who reduce distractions often report unexpected clarity, not answers, orientation. They don't suddenly know everything, but they know what matters. This distinction is critical. A distracted mind seeks certainty. A centered mind seeks coherence. Distraction fragments identity. You become many partial selves, responding to many demands. Silence allows integration. You become one. This is also why minimalism, simplicity, and intentional living often feel psychologically relieving. Not because less is morally superior, but because less allows integration. When you say no to unnecessary input, you say yes to psychic coherence. This applies not only to technology, but to conversations, obligations, and environments. Noise is not only sound, it is excess. Excess of information, excess of commitments, excess of emotional labor. Every unnecessary demand drains psychic energy, and energy drained cannot be used for individuation. Jung believed that psychological growth requires conserving energy, not hoarding it, but directing it intentionally. Reducing distractions is how you reclaim energy, not by force, but by refusal. Refusal to be constantly available. Refusal to absorb what does not nourish. Refusal to let the world define your inner rhythm. This refusal is not antisocial. It is self-respect. A psyche without boundaries becomes exhausted and resentful. A psyche with boundaries becomes resilient and grounded. The modern world rewards availability, speed, and reaction. The psyche requires depth, rhythm, and reflection. These two are in conflict, and you must choose which one governs your life. Reducing distractions is choosing depth over noise, not dramatically, not publicly, silently. And that silence strengthens something essential, your inner authority. When you are no longer pulled in all directions, you begin to trust yourself again. Your decisions become less impulsive, your reactions less automatic, your presence more stable. This stability is not rigidity, it is rootedness. And rooted people are harder to manipulate, harder to overwhelm, harder to destabilize. This is why reducing distractions feels threatening to systems that profit from attention. A centered individual is not easily controlled. Jung believed that individuation was an act of quiet rebellion, not against society, but against unconscious living. Reducing distractions is one of the most practical forms of that rebellion. In the next block, we will explore how excess and accumulation often function as shadow material disguised as necessity, and why simplifying your life is not loss, but psychological integration. For now, consider this carefully. What parts of your life exist only to distract you from yourself? The answer will reveal more than you expect. When you begin to organize your life in silence, something subtle but powerful happens. Your identity stops fluctuating. Most people don't realize how unstable their sense of self truly is. It shifts depending on context, approval, mood, and pressure. One version at work, another in relationships, another alone at night. This fragmentation feels normal because it's common, but it is not healthy. Carl Jung believed that psychological suffering often arises not from trauma alone, but from inner disunity. When the ego is disconnected from the self, the individual feels restless, reactive, and chronically unsatisfied, even when life appears fine. Order is what reconnects these parts. Not external perfection, not control, internal alignment. When your routines reflect your values, when your attention supports your psyche, when your boundaries protect your energy, your inner world begins to stabilize. And with stability comes identity. Not the identity you perform, but the one you inhabit. This is why silent organization feels grounding. You are no longer negotiating with chaos every day. Your mind stops asking, "What should I do? Who should I be? What am I missing?" Instead, it begins to ask better questions. What matters? What aligns? What must be removed? These are questions of maturity. Jung described individuation as the process by which a person becomes psychologically whole, not flawless, whole. And wholeness requires order, not imposed order, but organic structure. A tree does not grow randomly. It follows an inner logic. So does the psyche. When your life lacks structure, the psyche compensates through anxiety, obsession, or compulsive behavior. When structure is restored, these symptoms lose their function. They are no longer needed. This is why people often experience emotional calm after simplifying their lives, not because problems disappeared, but because the psyche is no longer overloaded. Order gives the mind a place to rest, and a resting mind becomes perceptive. You start noticing patterns, why certain situations drain you, why certain people unsettle you, why certain habits repeat. This awareness is not judgment, it is clarity. Jung believed that clarity dissolves neurosis, not instantly, but steadily. As order increases, self-trust grows. You stop second-guessing every decision. You stop outsourcing authority. You stop needing constant reassurance, because your life is no longer chaotic inside. And chaos is what creates doubt. A disorganized psyche is easy to destabilize. An organized psyche is resilient. This resilience does not mean emotional numbness. It means emotional regulation. You still feel deeply, but emotions no longer hijack behavior. You respond instead of react. This is the mark of psychological adulthood. Many people remain emotionally adolescent, not because they lack intelligence, but because their inner world has no structure, no rhythm, no containment. Silent organization provides that containment, and within containment, growth becomes possible. Another effect emerges quietly. Your relationship with time changes. You stop feeling constantly late, rushed, or behind. Not because your schedule is empty, but because your priorities are clear. Clarity collapses urgency. Urgency is a symptom of misalignment. When everything feels important, nothing truly is. Order reveals hierarchy. What is essential rises. What is noise fades. This brings peace that is not dependent on circumstances. Jung would call this a shift from ego-driven living to self-oriented living. The ego seeks control. The self seeks coherence. When your life is organized around coherence, not control, effort decreases. You stop forcing outcomes. You act with intention, not compulsion. This is why people who organize their lives quietly often appear calmer, steadier, and more grounded. They are no longer leaking energy. Energy leakage is invisible, but devastating. It happens through unresolved conflicts, excessive commitments, and constant distraction. When you remove these leaks, energy consolidates, and consolidated energy feels like confidence, not arrogance, not bravado. Confidence rooted in self-consistency. You know who you are because your life reflects it. This reflection is powerful. It reduces inner conflict. Inner conflict is exhausting. When thoughts, values, and actions contradict each other, the psyche experiences constant tension. Order resolves this tension. Alignment is relief. This relief does not make life easy, but it makes life honest. You stop living against yourself. And that alone changes everything. Jung believed that meaning emerges naturally when a person lives in alignment with the self. Meaning is not something you chase. It arises as a byproduct of coherence. When your life is organized internally, meaning appears externally. Work feels purposeful, relationships feel clearer, solitude feels nourishing instead of lonely. This is the quiet reward of silent transformation. No applause, no announcement. Just a sense of being at home within yourself. And this is why silent organization is so threatening to a culture built on noise. A person who does not seek validation is difficult to influence. A person who does not perform growth cannot be easily exploited. A person who knows their inner order does not envy chaos disguised as success. This is not withdrawal from the world. It is engagement from a centered place. Jung never advocated isolation. He advocated integration, and integration allows true participation. Not reactive participation, conscious participation. As you organize your life silently, you may notice fewer people understanding you. That is normal. Most people recognize noise, not depth. But those who do recognize depth will feel it immediately. You won't need to explain yourself. Your presence will speak. This is the final paradox. By doing the work quietly, you become unmistakable, not loud, not visible, but solid. And solidity attracts respect without demand. If there is one truth to leave you with, it is this: order is not restriction. It is freedom structured enough to last. The world does not need to see your transformation. Your psyche does. And when it does, everything else follows. Silently.